So what was interesting for you in the podcast?
I did not pose like a businessman or the officials. I'm me, and Ji-san is the host, and very brilliant questions. I was having fun to answer all the questions, especially the culture thing and culture through the business. I'm quite interested in difference between cultures. That's why I'm taking photos for exploring the different cultures. And I'm working as a businessman at the same time working for UNDP, that is an international development organization, working with all over the world. And I know just about a little bit about Cambodia and Japan. And I think most of the podcasts or any other articles or medias not digging deep enough about Japanese people, about Japanese business culture thing, about the difference between Japan and Cambodia. I think all the questions are interesting in that way.
I think the culture part is interesting because it is the biggest problem. Because all business problems are people problems. Because you could have a great product and the market has a clear problem this theoretically could fix, but it's all the people who have to say yes along the way. And this is where there's just this barrier. Man,
Yes.
how come they're nodding and like nothing is happening from these?
That is really from 17 Triggers interview days, asking bunch of questions, but no answers coming. No answer. What we need is coming. But that is real. We didn't pause and try to get an honest answer from the local people. And best tips is working with the local Cambodian who can speak English perfectly, reflecting our intention to ask the question and withdraw honest answer from them. That it takes time and it is technical. And I don't know many people can do that, but that is essential and very much foundation of any business. Otherwise, all the things are assumption, and based on assumption, we will fail, and business fail. It's painful.
As much as we say fail fast, learn fast, a failure in the Asian perspective of business is wasteful. Because money, products, God is wasteful. So if you can avoid the waste and check your assumptions at the very beginning, you save everyone's time, opportunity cost, and I think there's also hope. You lose hope a little bit, and that's why there is such a strong emphasis on building founder resilience. But a waste of hope.
Yeah, in that sense, I could talk about advertising agency days, Toyota days, Impact Hub days, 17 Triggers Day, UNDP. It's all about all the career and experiences can answer your questions. And it was fun. I did not reflect for a long time about Toyota, about agencies, about Impact Hub. It was quite nice to reflect some time.
It keeps those neurons active. Those synapses are meet again. And I hope that it comes back to you again in your business journey now, because it sounds like there was a lot more empathy. We didn't say it, the word empathy in the podcast, but actually we did a couple of times, but not as the skill to put yourself in the shoes of your customers and then realize I am still not you. So I still have to observe. I still have to check if your answers are really what they are. Sometimes the customers don't even know what they want.
Exactly. Yes. We cannot understand perfectly, but we can come closer what they are thinking. And until this is enough to understand them deeply. Otherwise, we have to research and we have to know more deeper about local contexts.
I had 3 things that I learned from you that I remember later. Listen to this again and I'll probably come up with more. But the first one was the Japan brand is strong, still strong at all levels. Government, corporate, MSME, startup. And that was an assumption that I had, was that the startup might have a bit of trouble because the startup moves fast. The way they speak is the startup founder is a different person than the Japanese corporate businessman and the Japanese policy. I'd say the policymaker and the business person are closer than the startup founder. And so my assumption, founder would have more resistance because there's a bit of confusion from the Cambodians that hold on, you are not what I expect of a Japanese business guy. You're much faster, more dynamic. But you challenge that assumption that actually the respect is there, that the Japan brand is strong. And this shows that countries need to invest in diplomatic relations and trust building because it makes it easier for Japanese business, their host businesses, to export. So if you want to export and make profit and bring back, the government has to do all of this groundwork to show that there is trust. So I kudos to the Japanese government for investing in Cambodia for. So Take-san and all of the other Take-sans who are going to Cambodia can have a smoother, safer experience doing business.
I respect all the Japanese people working for Cambodia. Otherwise, I will not be respected. We will not be respected as Japanese. Kudos for all the Japanese people.
I love that we're saying this in this current time in the world where aid development funding has plummeted and people don't realize. So you are case in point. What you're saying right now is the importance for the economy, because all these political leaders, they talk about the economy, they talk about earning money, but they are not fixing, they're not doing the real work. If anything, they're actually cutting programs that help businesses to trade. So this is something I learned, I picked up from this conversation with you, is that actually it's even aid has economic value, not just for, yes, we should help and it's a human rights and a humanities type of topic, but it is that actually helps the economy in the mid or even short to long term in building trust activities. So that was the first two things. The third was that despite Japan and Cambodia being super different, there are actually so many similarities. So when you talk about the timing and the hierarchies, actually just because that there is this cultural hierarchical power distance and things like this in place, it means that there is less friction than people realize.
I think so.
So that I was like, wow, really? Actually, there's a lot more similarity than I thought.
Do you have any difference between Singapore and Cambodia? It's totally different, but do you have any similarities and big differences?
The hierarchy exists as well. I think this is Asia in general is very hierarchical. As you know, I'm born in New Zealand, and we're one of the most egalitarian societies to the point where it hurts us. We have this tall poppy syndrome where you shoot the person who is doing well. But in Singapore, it's a bit different. Asia is very different. But Singapore is a different beast. Like Japan is very unlike the rest of Asia. Singapore anomaly globally from what I have seen, right? It's a first world nation in one generation. It's super efficient, super first principles, very rational, very fast, quick to cut relationships if they have to. Yeah. Whereas, I think that the talents, I'll speak different from just my experience seeing with the embassy there on different occasions. I think that Singaporean diplomatic talent is high. I was very impressed with the people skills and things that I saw from the government versus Singapore corporate. And there is the hierarchy. Singapore is an anomaly, and the relationships are perceived a bit differently, the way that they run. And specifically the government side of things, much more conservative, much more long-term, much more strategic. Singapore corporations are very different. Profit and pragmatic. If a service or a product or an action will result in more social and environmental outcomes at the same price, of course. It costs a bit more. They really need to think about it. So it's unlike, let's say, European or Australasian counterparts, where there's a bit more breathing room for sustainability. In Singapore, it's still seen as the problem, thing. So this is just my honest take from working with Singaporean brands and businesses in Cambodia. Also talking to Singaporean corporates in Singapore, how they operate. So I will say that the cream of the crop in Singapore are some of the best leaders and managers you'll ever find globally. But I think Singapore's education system was strategically put in place to build managers and technical managers as well. So when it comes to more nuanced thinking that it requires more creativity, we don't see that in the same way. It must be this. So to the issue that you were saying about the Japanese culture needing things to be perfect before it comes out. In Singapore, it's rigid, but in the sense of 1 + 1 is 2. It can never be 3. I almost not compute. Or you get a series of organizations that come through looking at property and things, and they know that Cambodia is a bit of a cowboy market, frontier market, and then they behave that way. So this is another reality that we have seen in our public cases. So I'm not speaking out of nowhere. There are plenty of news articles of businessmen in property that have been arrested in Cambodia for sort of shady activities and things. Singaporeans do get Japan a particular treatment, but from my reading, it feels like it's not at the same level. There is a lot of respect for Singapore and Singapore for sure.
I see. Interesting. I've never heard about the connection between Singapore and Cambodia. Yeah, I feel like Singapore is much more like Japanese and more stricter than Japanese people and more efficient. It's like a nationwide nation strategy, right?
Yes, absolutely. There was a famous, keep talking about it. I'm trying to make it more famous, but the internal tagline where every button works. And it's a wonderful organizational tagline to bring everybody together. Even the cleaner understands this, right? You're cleaning, you want to go from floor 1 to floor 2, button not working, needs to work. Call somebody, make it work right away. Same day, someone will come fix it. The website, 404, happen, needs to work, inefficient and ruthlessly prioritizing. Because as you know, no Malaysia ever turned off the water, like it's surrounded by much larger theocratic nation, mandatory conscription and work off, I think it's excellence of survival.
I see.
They have no choice but to be the best, operate like the best, or else they lose. But are one of the world's best, like Norway, best examples of what you can do once you make tough, big decisions and you fight corruption to its very teeth. It was always in the top 3.
Oh, wow.
Transparency International. And speculated that Singapore is Missouri, one of the few that has surplus. I think with our conversation of why Singapore is interested in sort of cross-border trade, needing ASEAN and Japan to be closer, the middle powers now, they're all saying with the global turmoil is that with tech and AI disruption, geopolitical disruption, and now the energy shock and price happening there, I think that in any of their strategic planning, they could have planned for all of these things so fast and so close to each other. Completely unpredictable. How do you prepare your 5 million people for AI? What happens to all these managers that are suddenly not white collar workers that can be out? Tax. If there's no workers, who's paying tax income to the country? So what happened to these people who need homes? Before Lee Kuan Yew, the founding father, was in these big seminars, governments in different countries, and they'd ask him. And I think he was challenged on Singapore's, at the time, unemployment level or certain demographics that are very poor. And he's like, there is an inevitability in this, when you do those simulations and when you run at this level, we have to be the best and do the things. You will always have people left behind. But common sense tells us this as well. You will always have people left behind. And it's not like Singapore doesn't have systems in place for them. But I think approach didn't sit well with Western liberals. Let's say the one that was like, oh, you are ruthless and you are unempathetic and you are not kind. I don't think that's true. I mean, I'm one of the most empathetic, like egalitarian, societies in Australia, but I'm also a Singapore son. And I've seen it both sides where I realize the necessity for zero tolerance drug policy, executing Australians. Okay, who you are. Straight to the gallows. You bring drugs to Singapore, but it comes from a place of necessity. And I get the reality in like America or even New Zealand, we have a big drug problem with methamphetamine. Yeah. As I get older, I kind of think, because these issues is that one person comes through, they don't ruin one person's life. It's thousands of, like this person had a family, this person had friends, this person was working somewhere. All these people get impacted. And Singapore said, we don't have the buffer to allow for inevitable human flaw in executing a prosperous future for our country. We just cannot allow that to happen. So
I see.
Sorry, I know we've gone on a huge tangent between there, but sorry, it's for something it's very close to my heart, for because I the Singaporean way, but at the same time, I do get it. I think that it also creates a place of just focus on what's in front of you only and not.
Yeah.
In response, we're saying about the double-edged sword of Japanese perfectionism also hurting the Japanese.
And now, the Japanese society is too perfect. Everything is too convenient. Nobody have to make an effort. Everywhere there is a store. Even 80 years old, 85 years old, grandma can go to convenience store and buy something and survive every day. And there is a post telecommunication services through the convenience store and grab delivery service everywhere. We don't have to walk. It's too convenient. And Japanese people used to walk everywhere. They lose their identity. It's changing. It's a globalization, and globalization eating Japanese cultures. And I understand some people are resisting to the globalization. We have to protect Japanese cultures. We don't need people from outside. It is what it is. So we have some people coming from outside. We have to open our country. We have to from outside. We have to tell we are doing inside Japan, but complete different way. Still, Japanese government is struggling is how to move from 90s and to before 2000 golden era and India, Estonia, Denmark, Singapore, and those kinds of countries doing very well in digital public infrastructure, digital public goods, open source solutions. Japanese are not open. That is a very, very big disadvantage. We have to be connected with other countries, other systems. We have to fuck off the legacy systems. We have to renew our systems in modern era in Japanese way. I think there is a Japanese way, learn from outside and evaporating, changing into Japanese way and how to say, assembling, consolidating other countries' best practices into Japanese best practices. That's what we were doing. We have been done. So I think there is a way. It takes time. I understand 30 years, yes, we lost, but we are still evolving slowly. What we can see is changing little by little from young generations and outsiders, digital tech talents coming to Japan. They will change and they are the catalysts change Japanese society, I think.
I think that we see on international news about what's happening in Japan is that the winds of change are there. It has certainly become more nationalistic. But we have to acknowledge what you were saying, that there is a lot of this external influence and Japan feel a lot like they're losing their way, and doesn't necessarily mean that it's like right-wing American politics. We're not importing this, although some of it are being employed. But I don't think that this is the right approach of right or wrong. It's like, well, we have to what we are feeling, and we have to acknowledge the over-convenience or the over-globalization. But I think the question is, well, what do we mean by this? Because you were addressing health and walking. We were addressing certain identity behaviors that make Japanese society, and to be eroded by almost corporate convenience. And I would almost argue this is that particular I heard was more a corporate thing than it was like foreign interference about Japanese people walk less. Because I know it's some kind of malicious intent, but more of a negative externality that came from profit-oriented activities to make things convenient. But this is empathy and then not a deep. This is a shallow empathy, like we are helping Japanese or Cambodian consumers. We are giving them more option, but are we making their life better? So this is the values part, and this conversation seems to be missing. And then the next part of empathy, which is, so how are they feeling? So let's say you've done it and we are not checking. Is it better for them? We need to remove. And I are not teaching people enough critical thinking to recognize when something that is too good really doesn't serve all of us, like social media, for example. Sorry, I went on a bit of a rant there, but I think the takeaway was we are actually not empathetic enough, and we are not bringing values enough into this. And I think this is the starting point.
Yeah. It's a very good conversation. I like it. I have to think about that more for Japanese society, Cambodian society. What we are helping is really help the society and the people.
Yeah, are we? That's the $1 million question. That's not even the million. That's the 100-year question. You might have the 7th generation principle. When you build something, you build you, and you consider, this was the native Indians. This was even the Confucius, like Yang Ming, I think we called him. I think he was also from what I recall, Kalyan Mei, who was the previous chair of RUPP in Cambodia, like the biggest university, fluent Japanese. He's constantly, I think he's the chair also of the CJBC. He introduced me to Wang Yangming, which is the Chinese Confucian philosopher. And this was very popular in Japan. From my understanding, was it influenced a lot of samurai. Yeah, I don't know. Putting that out there, I'm still reading about this, but the philosophy was that we are one with nature, and we need to consider the impacts of our actions even after we're gone. And very powerful thinking that I think we are lacking now in corporates globally. I think this is outside of just Cambodia and Japan.
It's very shallow. You are saying empathy at that just now, but I see it's quite shallow. And what is going on here is making a profit and get capitalist things. We have to think harmonization through the business and what we are benefiting. I don't know. It's not right now, I think.
It sounds like the corporations should be serving community. Businesses exist as a problem, just like what you've said right at the very start. And right now, it feels more like have to serve corporate.
Yeah. Opposite way.
I really, and we got way the podcast usually is. I will talk to the team. I'll say, hey, look, let's do a behind the scenes or after see how put it together, because this I think was interesting. But was after we talked, what did we learn? And then I was like, oh, because what we found interesting, I think, is going to be interesting to others for sure.